I took the job at SunnyTime Amusements out of desperation, not nostalgia. By then, I'd been out of steady work for almost 6 months. Rent was 2 weeks past due, and the only things in my fridge were a jar of mustard and half a lemon that had started to fossilize. The listing said night security guard, full-time, immediate hire, competitive pay. I didn't care that the park had been closed for years after the incident. I didn't even care that most of the town swore the place was cursed. All I saw were numbers on a paycheck that might keep the lights on. It was strange walking up the hill to the park that first evening. The sunset poured over the horizon in garish red streaks that made the faded rides look like wax figures melting under some cruel spotlight. The giant sign over the gate still read, "Welcome to SunnyTime, where every day's a smile," though the paint had begun to blister and peel, and the bulbs around the letters flickered like they were struggling to remember how to be cheerful. The place used to be the pride of Rosemead, built in the late 80s by a local entrepreneur, filled with roller coasters, arcade halls, a Ferris wheel overlooking the river, and a carousel so detailed it looked carved by angels. I came here as a kid once or twice. I even had a photo somewhere. Me and my brother eating cotton candy, with Sunny the bear standing behind us, waving. Sunny the bear, the mascot. Everyone remembered Arthur Dempsey, the man inside the costume. He was SunnyTime, the walking face of the park. Kids loved him. Parents did too. He danced, hugged, handed out balloons, always humming the park's theme song under that suffocating foam head. Until that night, it was all over the news. He'd been fired for reasons no one ever agreed on: unprofessional conduct, age-related instability, budget cuts. Theories changed depending on who you asked. What didn't change was what came next. He came back after closing in full costume, locked the gates, and slaughtered 7 people. Managers, accountants, the PR woman who'd written the press release about his dismissal. They said he used one of the novelty knives from the gift shop, the kind with a bright red handle and the words, "Slice a smile," printed on the blade. When the police found him, he was sitting on the carousel, soaked in blood, the bear's head still on. Witnesses said he was humming the theme song, "It's a SunnyTime world, where laughter never ends." Then he cut his own throat. That was 10 years ago. The park reopened 3 months ago under new ownership. The company wanted to restore local pride and honor the legacy. They cleaned up, rebranded, painted everything a fresh coat of cheer. But locals didn't come back. Kids didn't either. They opened weekends only. By nightfall, the place was empty. The kind of empty that feels unnatural, like laughter might echo there even when no one's around. That's where I came in. When I arrived for my first shift, the day crew was already leaving. Teenagers in orange shirts, carrying trash bags and dragging their feet. One of them, a blonde girl with tired eyes, muttered to her friend, "He won't last the week." They both laughed. The park's main office sat just past the gates, inside an old brick building that used to be the funhouse. The new manager, a thin man with a clipboard and the kind of forced grin that never reached his eyes, met me there. His name was Kyle. He didn't shake hands. He looked like someone who flinched at noise. "Everything's been tested and inspected," he said. "We don't expect trouble, but you know how it is. Local vandals, teenagers breaking in, that sort of thing." He slid a set of keys across the desk. "Your office is in the security booth by the carousel. Cameras cover the main zones. You'll do 2 patrols a night, log any activity, and stay until 6 a.m. He hesitated, then added, "Don't engage with anyone inside the park after midnight. Call me first." It struck me as odd. "You expecting anyone?" He looked past me toward the carousel. "No, but sometimes the past doesn't stay buried here." Before I could ask what he meant, he excused himself, said he had to lock up the front gate. I figured that was the end of orientation. When I stepped outside, I noticed someone waiting by the carousel. A man I hadn't seen before. He was older, with a security badge from the old company still clipped to his faded uniform. He held a crumpled piece of paper in one hand. "You're the new guy," he said, voice rough from cigarettes. "I guess so," I replied. "You worked here before?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked toward the carousel, at the lead horse, where a faint smear of rust or something darker still stained the pole. Then he handed me the paper. "You'll need these," he said, "if you want to last the night." Before I could ask what it was, he turned and walked off into the shadows, past the cracked cotton candy stand, and vanished behind the tilt-a-whirl. I looked down at the paper. 8 short sentences, written in block letters with a shaky hand. Rules for the night watch at SunnyTime Amusements. Rule 1. Always carry a teddy bear with you. Rule 2. If you hear children's laughter through the PA, do not investigate. He is baiting you. Rule 3. If you hear someone humming the park's main theme, go back to your office and hide. Don't run. Rule 4. If you notice the head from Sunny's costume, do not touch it, and never put it on yourself. Rule 5. The carousel will sometimes start by itself. You must not look at it. Keep your back to the carousel until it stops. He is always sitting on the lead horse. Rule 6. If the camera shows a person in Sunny's costume attacking people with a knife, don't react. It's not real. Rule 7. If you see a human-sized figure in a Sunny the Bear costume, do not attempt to communicate. Pretend he doesn't exist. Rule 8. The lights in the park may go out. In this case, take a teddy bear in your hands and slowly walk to the main gate. Do not run. He interprets running as an invitation to play tag. You will not win. Attention. If Sunny appears right in front of you, give him the teddy bear and keep walking. The last line, scrawled at the bottom, was almost illegible. He just wants them to laugh again. I stood there for a while, listening to the faint creak of the Ferris wheel turning in the wind. The first hour of my shift passed uneventfully. That should have been a relief, but instead it made me uneasy. The park had that kind of silence that doesn't sit still. It crept between the empty stalls, the cold benches, the frozen rides, humming with something that felt almost expectant. My flashlight beam cut through the dark like a thin blade, glinting off the metal rails of the roller coaster, the glossy paint of the carousel horses, and the wet asphalt of the pathways. The air smelled faintly of sugar, rust, and something that might once have been popcorn oil. I walked the main loop twice, through the midway, past the old arcade, up to the Ferris wheel, then down toward the food court. Every corner of the place carried that cheerful rot that only amusement parks have when they've been left alone too long. The kind that makes you feel like the laughter had sunk into the walls and died there. I kept telling myself I didn't believe in any of that supernatural nonsense. The old man and his rules. That was probably some disgruntled ex-employee trying to spook the new guy. Maybe the same one who used to wear the mascot suit himself. The list was so absurd it might as well have been a prank. Still, I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. I folded the note and tucked it into my jacket pocket. Back in the booth, I poured myself a cup of cheap coffee from the thermos I'd brought. The monitors glowed weakly. 6 grainy camera feeds showing every major area of the park. Nothing but the wind moving trash across the pathways, the lights swaying slightly on their cables. I tried to relax, to think about anything else. Rent, groceries. How maybe this job could be the start of some kind of routine again. For once, I didn't want to think about the massacre or Sunny the Bear, or that haunting theme song the park used to play over the loudspeakers. Then, around 1:17 a.m., the speakers crackled. Just a faint hiss at first. Static, soft and hollow, like an old radio struggling for a signal. I frowned, glanced up at the ceiling where the PA grill sat above the door. It wasn't supposed to be active. Kyle had said the sound system was disconnected for renovations. The hiss deepened into a faint hum, and then into laughter. High-pitched, playful, unmistakably childish laughter. It started faintly, almost shy, as if coming from very far away. Then another voice joined in, and another, until it sounded like a whole group of kids laughing together, looping through the system. For a second, I just froze, cup halfway to my lips. Then I remembered Rule 2. If you hear children's laughter through the PA, do not investigate. He is baiting you. The words scratched through my mind like glass on concrete. My first thought was that the system had somehow rebooted and was playing an old promotional clip. That had to be it. But there was something wrong with the way the laughter sounded. It didn't loop evenly. It rose and fell like breathing, like the kids were getting closer to the microphone each time. And beneath it, under the giggling, there was something else. A slow, rhythmic sound. Someone was humming. The melody was faint, but I knew it instantly. The park's theme song. I stood up so fast the chair fell over behind me. My pulse was hammering in my ears. The PA grill above the door vibrated slightly, the laughter still spilling through, now mixed with the distorted hum of that song. It's a SunnyTime world, where laughter never ends. I stepped toward the control panel, intending to shut the speakers off. But as soon as my hand reached for the switch, all the laughter stopped at once. Every single voice cut out mid-breath. The silence afterward was so sharp it felt alive. Then, from outside the booth, somewhere near the carousel, I heard a single squeak. The sound of a shoe turning slowly against the pavement, followed by another. 2, 3, for slow steps. I held my breath. That was when I remembered the rest of the rule. Do not investigate. So I didn't. I backed away from the door, forcing myself not to look out the window. My flashlight lay on the desk, but I didn't dare pick it up. I didn't want to shine it anywhere near those windows. For the first time since taking the job, I felt genuinely afraid. Not nervous, frightened. It wasn't just the footsteps. It was the feeling that something on the other side of that glass was waiting for me to react. When I finally dared to look at the monitors, one of them, the carousel feed, had flickered to black. I stared at the static, trying to convince myself it was just interference. Then, as the image blinked back for a moment, I caught something that turned my stomach to ice. The carousel lights were off, but the lead horse, the white one with the gold mane, seemed to gleam faintly, like it had been freshly painted. And sitting astride it for a split second before the feed went dead again was a shape. Large, rounded, with 2 circular ears on top. A mascot's head. I shut off the monitor, heart hammering. Then I started rummaging through the office drawers. I didn't know why. Instinct, maybe. I needed to find something. At that moment, I remembered Rule 1. Always carry a teddy bear with you. It sounded ridiculous, but I couldn't shake the image of that figure on the horse, or the sound of those children laughing through the PA. I tore through the drawers, knocking over stacks of paperwork and an old park map, until finally I found one shoved behind a pile of lost and found trinkets. A small teddy bear, dusty, one eye missing, but still intact. A faded yellow ribbon around its neck. I picked it up. The second my hand closed around it, the lights flickered, then steadied. The PA system gave a single crackle like a sigh, and went dead. I sat down, clutching the bear, trying to steady my breathing. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the shutters. The carousel was silent, the monitors calm, the laughter gone. The rest of the night passed in uneasy silence. The teddy bear sat beside the monitor, its single remaining eye catching the faint glow of the screens. I didn't sleep, I couldn't. Every creak in the rafters, every shift of wind through the rides made me flinch. By the time the morning staff arrived, I felt like I'd aged a decade. When the sun finally came up, the park looked almost innocent again. Bright colors, chipped paint, the glint of dew on the Ferris wheel cars. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it had all been nerves, just tricks of the dark and overactive imagination, and too much caffeine. But next night, when I clocked in again, the air already felt heavier. The park lights came on one by one, but instead of illuminating the place, they only seemed to push the shadows further inward. I started my patrol. The first hour was normal or close enough. I checked the roller coaster gates, the food stalls, the maintenance sheds. The wind carried faint smells of old sugar and engine oil. My flashlight beam slid across painted faces of cartoon animals peeling from the walls. I passed the carousel, keeping my eyes averted from the horses, trying not to think of what I'd seen on the monitor the night before. It was near the midway that I first heard it. A faint sound under the whisper of the wind. Someone was humming. At first it was just a low murmur, a sound you might mistake for the wind playing through the cables. But as I stopped to listen, the pattern became clear. Notes rising and falling in slow rhythm. The same melody I'd heard as a kid every time I rode the carousel. It's a sunny-time world, where laughter never ends. My mouth went dry. The sound was coming from the direction of the carousel. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. The memory of the note in my pocket surfaced instantly. Rule 3. If you hear someone humming the park's main theme, go back to your office and hide. Don't run. For a few seconds, I stood there on the cracked pavement, trying to rationalize it. Maybe a maintenance worker had come in early. Maybe one of the animatronics had somehow powered back on. But even as I told myself that, I realized the humming wasn't echoing through speakers. It wasn't artificial. It had a voice. Human, wet, too close. I turned slowly, aiming my flashlight toward the carousel plaza. The beam caught on the edge of the platform. The horses were still, their glass eyes dull and motionless. The lights around the roof weren't on, but something beneath the canopy glimmered faintly, like the reflection of a moving shadow. And the humming, it was coming from inside the carousel. No footsteps, no creaking floorboards. Just that low, steady hum, circling the platform, getting slightly louder with each rotation. I backed away, slowly, carefully. The flashlight shook in my hand. The old boards beneath my boots seemed to groan louder than usual, and I had the sickening impression that whatever was inside there could hear me breathing. When I reached the corner of the midway, I turned and began walking back toward the booth. Not running, not even speeding up. I kept my eyes forward and my pace steady, just like the rule said. Halfway there, the humming stopped. The silence was worse. I reached the office door, shut it behind me, and locked it. Then I pulled the curtains closed and crouched under the desk, pressing my back against the cool metal. My pulse was pounding in my throat. I waited 1 minute, 2, 5. Then something brushed against the outer wall. A soft drag, like fabric sliding along painted wood. And then, the faintest whisper, almost amused, "Evan." I bit my lip to keep from making a sound. The whisper was followed by a single tap on the door. Then silence again. The monitors flickered once, static pulsing through the carousel feed. But when the image returned, everything looked normal, empty. I didn't move until nearly an hour had passed. When I finally got up, the only thing I noticed out of place was the teddy bear on my desk. I could have sworn I'd left it sitting upright, facing the monitors. But now it was turned toward the door, its single-stitched eye staring straight at it. I spent the next hour in the booth just listening. The silence wasn't an absence of sound, but a presence. It was the kind of quiet that comes after something unnatural, a thick, syrupy stillness that felt heavier than any noise. It was the air itself, waiting, holding its breath for me to make the next move. Every creak of the amusement park, every rustle of a leaf in the night breeze, was not a sound but a punctuation in that silence. The teddy bear still faced the door, a silent, stitched sentinel. I took it with me, clinging to the childish hope that it might somehow keep watch for me, that its blank button eyes could see what I could not. Around 2:40 a.m., a restless dread had settled deep in my bones. I decided I needed to finish my patrol. Maybe it was pride, the stubborn refusal to let a ghost story win. Maybe it was just stupidity, a desperate need for the mundane reality of a checklist to override the crawling sensation on my skin. But I couldn't spend the rest of the night hiding under a desk. The rational part of me, a voice that sounded small and very far away, insisted I'd overreacted, that the wind had knocked something over. So I unbolted the door. The metallic clunk was obscenely loud in the hush. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped back into the devouring dark, its cold, solid weight a small comfort. The night air had turned colder. The rides loomed like fossilized animals from a forgotten age, their cheerful paint and bright colors leached away by the moon, leaving them half buried in shifting shadow. My boots crunched on gravel, then echoed with a hollow, lonely sound across the stretches of pavement as I made my way back toward the carousel. The music wasn't playing this time. No humming, no ghostly chorus of voices. Just the slow, rhythmic creak of the wooden horses as they swayed slightly in the wind. It was a mockery of movement, a dance without dancers. But as I drew closer, The beam of my flashlight caught something at the edge of the platform. A dark shape slumped against one of the support beams. It was round, too large, perfectly shaped. The bare head, Sunny's head. Its matted synthetic fur glistened wetly in the light, still stained dark around the muzzle where Arthur Dempsey had slit his throat years ago. The glass eyes, impossibly clean amidst the filth, were not dull or dead. They reflected twin points of light, giving it an uncanny sense of life. For a long moment, I was statue still, my breath caught in my throat, just staring at it. The world had shrunk to the circle of my flashlight and that terrible grinning visage. Rule 4 echoed in my mind, as a clear command spoken directly into my thoughts. If you notice the head from Sunny's costume, do not touch it, and never put it on yourself. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I took one shuffling step back, then another, the pavement feeling unsteady beneath my feet. But something in my chest seized. A sudden violent pressure behind my ribs, like my heart had suddenly forgotten how to beat properly. The air grew thin, and a wave of dizziness washed over me. Then, faintly, a voice from inside my head. A whisper etched directly onto the surface of my brain. "It still fits, Evan. It's waiting for you." My fingers went numb. The flashlight slipped from my grasp, hitting the asphalt. Its beam spinning wildly, throwing dizzying arcs of light across the painted, leering horses and the fractured, funhouse mirror fragments of my own reflection. I squeezed my eyes shut until colors bloomed in the darkness. It isn't real, it's panic, it's fatigue, it's the power of suggestion. The voice grew clearer, louder, smooth and coaxing, threaded with static. "You've already been chosen. Just one moment, one look through my eyes, and you'll see what I see." I stumbled backward, my boots scraping against the pavement. The carousel gave a long, mournful creak behind me. From the corner of my eye, I saw one of the horses twitch, a jerky, spastic movement. Its painted grin seemed to stretch wider, the wood around the mouth groaning as if it were straining to form a new expression. I forced myself to tear my gaze away from the bear's head, fixing my eyes instead on the ticket booth across the plaza. I needed to move now. "Evan." The voice again, softer now, almost pitying. "Don't make me wear it for you." The air around me turned cold, not the chill of the night. This was inside me, spreading from the base of my skull, leaching the warmth from my own blood. My vision shimmered at the edges, the world distorting. The ticket booth seemed to warp and stretch, receding further away. I bent down to grab the flashlight and froze. The bare head was gone. There had been no sound, no scrape of its weight being dragged. 1 second it was there, a focal point of all my terror, and the next it had simply vanished, erased from existence. I staggered back toward the midway, light shaking wildly across the pavement, my lungs burning as if I'd been underwater too long. I didn't look back, I couldn't. By the time I made it to the security booth, I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, gasping for air. My eyes adjusted to the dim interior. There, on the desk, the teddy bear still sat. Only now, its stitched grin was turned toward me. Its head was tilted slightly to one side, in a posture of curious, patient attention, as if listening. For a few minutes, I just sat there in the operator's chair, my whole body trembling, trying to slow my racing heart. The voice in my head had gone quiet, leaving behind a hollow, ringing silence. But through the static of the old PA system, I heard something new, faint and distant, like a half-broken transmission. "He wants his head back." The clock above the door read 3:27 a.m., 2.5 hours until dawn. I sat in the booth, hunched forward in the glow of the security monitors. The amusement park looked frozen, still as a painting. The rides hunched like sleeping giants, their silhouettes swaying in the weak night wind. The only sound came from the low electric hum of the monitors. I wanted to go home. I wanted this night to end. But I couldn't shake the memory of the voice whispering from that bare head, or the way the carousel horses had seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. So, I sat there, arms crossed, clutching the teddy bear to my chest like an idiot, trying to breathe evenly. The smell of old popcorn and cleaning solution clung to the booth, a faint ghost of the park's daytime cheer. Suddenly, the monitors flickered, just once. A brief ripple, like static running through an old VHS tape. I leaned closer, squinting at the central feed. For a moment, I thought I saw movement near the food court. But when I blinked, the picture was empty again. Power surge, I muttered under my breath. Just old wiring, that's all. Then every monitor in the booth flashed white at once. The hum deepened, the air itself buzzing with static, and when the feed came back online, I froze. Every screen showed the same image. Not empty walkways or quiet rides, but people. Crowds of them. Men, women, children, all moving through the park like a living memory. Balloons floated, lights shimmered, and faint laughter spilled from the speakers above me. Faint but unmistakably real. At the center of it all, walking down the main path, was a huge bear mascot. Sunny. I watched, heart hammering, as he waved to invisible children. The camera feed shifted, following him somehow, as if he'd taken control of it. The people around him looked so real that I could almost smell the cotton candy. For a second, I thought maybe it was pre-recorded footage from before the massacre. Then Sunny stopped walking. He turned toward a group of guests, a mother and her little boy. The knife appeared in his hand. I slammed my fist against the desk. Jesus Christ! The mother screamed. The camera didn't cut away. The blade flashed, a jerking rhythm that was almost mechanical. Red sprayed across the ground like confetti. The boy's balloon drifted upward, out of frame. Rule 6 came screaming back into my head. If the camera shows a person in Sunny's costume attacking people with a knife, don't react. It's not real. My stomach turned, while creeping up my throat. I fumbled for the power switch on the console, flipping every breaker I could find, but the screens refused to die. Another flash, another scene. Now Sunny stood by the carousel, his paws dripping red. A man in a maintenance uniform stumbled backward, clutching his stomach. Sunny followed, tilting his head in mock sympathy before driving the knife down again. Then he turned toward the camera and smiled. Not the molded happy grin of a mascot, but a real expression, visible beneath the edges of the costume's jaw. Flesh showing through, a glint of a human mouth stretching too wide. He raised one paw and waved. The gesture was slow, deliberate. I stumbled back from the console, my chair clattering to the floor. The park's PA system came alive, crackling through the static. A child's laughter echoed through the speakers, bright and distant. They can't laugh without me. The voice was warped and layered, as though two people were speaking through the same throat. One cheerful, one mournful. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the monitors went dark. When they flickered back on, the park was empty again. Every ride still, every path deserted. The laughter had stopped. My pulse hammered in my ears as I stared at the blank screens. No blood, no people, just the wind moving through the park. For a moment, I didn't breathe, I didn't move, but something on the central monitor caught my eye. Just for a second, barely long enough to be certain, I thought I saw a figure standing beside the carousel. A large bear-shaped shadow, perfectly still, facing the camera. Then it was gone. I sat there in the flickering light, gripping the teddy bear so hard its stitching began to tear. My mind screamed to leave, but my body refused to move. I realized I was waiting not for dawn, but for whatever came after. When I got home that morning, the sun already hurt my eyes. It should have been comforting, that warm spill of daylight through the blinds, but it felt too bright, like something fake, too thin to keep the dark out. I dropped my keys somewhere near the counter and sat on the floor beside my couch. My uniform still smelled like dust and the faint sweetness of cotton candy that clung to everything in that cursed park. I should have quit. Any sane man would have. But when I opened my banking app, staring at the 4 digits that stood between me and eviction, the decision was made for me. I couldn't afford to walk away. The amusement park might have been haunted, but at least it paid every Friday. By noon, I was having nightmares. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bear's head sitting beside the carousel, its vacant grin stretching wider each time I remembered it. The laughter still echoed faintly behind my ears, stitched into my nerves. I told myself I'd just do one more shift, maybe two, just until I found something better. The lie tasted bitter in my mouth. The third night began badly. By the time I reached the guard booth, my hands were already shaking. The fluorescent light above the desk had burned out, so the room was steeped in a dim, sickly glow from the monitors. The park looked emptier than usual, like even the shadows didn't want to be there. I set my thermos down beside the radio and checked the time. 11:42 p.m. Another long, sleepless night ahead. I thought about the rules again. 8 of them, written in a shaky hand on a stained sheet of paper. I had tucked them into my breast pocket, but I didn't need to read them anymore. They'd burned themselves into my memory. I wasn't proud to admit that I'd already started carrying a teddy bear with me. Its fur was matted, one button eye missing, but I kept it close anyway. The first hour was uneventful. I walked the perimeter, checked the food stalls, made sure the roller coaster gates were still locked. The air was thick, heavy with humidity, and the faint hum of the generators carried across the empty park. When I passed the carousel, I caught myself glancing at it. The painted horses gleamed faintly in the moonlight, their open mouths frozen mid-whinny. I remembered the way the bear's head had been sitting there the night before, its grin catching the light. But the space beside the carousel was empty now. Nothing but footprints in the dust. I was halfway through my lap when I heard it. A faint click, then another. I froze. It was something strange. A creaking rhythmic mechanical sound, soft and distant, like an old engine struggling to breathe. Then came the music. The carousel's organ began to play on its own. It started as a slow, dragging tune, a warped version of the park's jingle, replaying in uneven bursts as though the machine was waking from a nightmare. Rule 5 rose in my mind like a commandment carved into bone. The carousel will sometimes start by itself. You must not look at it. Keep your back to the carousel until it stops. He is always sitting on the lead horse. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed to look, to confirm what my ears were hearing. But I knew better now, so I turned my back to it. I stood absolutely still, my flashlight pointed toward the snack stands. The carousel's song grew louder, the music straining with each rotation. I could hear the gears grinding, the soft rhythmic clatter of hooves striking the platform. Something moved behind me. I heard it, even through the blaring music. The subtle shift of weight, the groan of wood beneath something heavy. The carousel was spinning faster now, and for a moment, I thought I could hear laughter again. But not the laughter of children this time. This one was low, hoarse, a man's laugh. It came in short bursts, as if whoever was laughing was choking back tears at the same time. I clenched the teddy bear tighter in my hand. My pulse throbbed in my ears, and sweat prickled at the back of my neck. "Don't turn around," I whispered. "Don't you dare." Then the music warped again, the melody faltering, slipping into strange off-key tones that twisted in on themselves. The creaking slowed, the laughter stopped. Finally, the carousel came to a halt. I waited another full minute, counting each second before turning. The carousel stood silent and still again. The horses faced outward, their chipped paint catching the dim light. Everything looked exactly as it should, except one of the horses, the lead one, had something on its saddle. A small tattered teddy bear, the same kind I carried. It sat upright, perfectly centered, facing me. Its single button I seemed to glint in the dark, as though it were watching me back. I swallowed hard, then forced myself to keep walking. I didn't pick it up, I didn't look at the carousel again. When I returned to the booth, my hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped my flashlight. I sat down, clutching the bear to my chest, and stared at the monitors. Nothing else happened, no laughter, no music. Just the steady hum of the park's machines, the flicker of static on the screens, and the faint smell of oil and dust. The night stretched thin and slow, like a film reel unraveling in the dark. The carousel hadn't moved again, but the sound of it, that warped jingle, that scraping metal rhythm, stayed in my head long after it had gone silent. By 3 in the morning, the park had fallen into a kind of stillness I'd never heard before. Not peace, something closer to exhaustion. Even the hum of the lights seemed quieter, dimmer, like the whole place was holding its breath. Every few seconds, one of the cameras would catch a stutter, a blink of static, a jump cut, and the lights in the park would flash in response. The rhythm felt deliberate, almost like Morse code. I forced myself out of the chair and stepped outside. The air was heavy with dew, the kind that clings to your skin and makes you feel like you're standing too close to something alive. The midway stretched before me in perfect moonlit stillness. The cotton candy stands, the cracked popcorn machine, the faded clown cutouts, all perfectly ordinary, perfectly abandoned. And then I saw him. At first, I thought it was just another trick of the light, a shadow cast by one of the lampposts. But as I blinked, the silhouette didn't fade. Sunny. He was standing at the far end of the park, near the entrance gate. Tall, broad-shouldered, that stupid oversized head catching the weak light like polished plastic. His posture was wrong. The head tilted too far to one side, like the neck underneath had broken and set itself at an angle. His arms hung stiffly by his sides, fingers grazing the ground. He didn't move, didn't wave. He just stood there, half in shadow, half in the dull glow of the floodlights. Rule 7 echoed in my mind like a prayer I didn't want to remember. If you see a human-sized figure in a Sunny the Bear costume, do not attempt to communicate. Pretend he doesn't exist. I forced my breathing to steady, eyes locked on the pavement, pretending to check the flashlight batteries, pretending he wasn't there, pretending I didn't feel his gaze pressing into me like a physical weight. The air grew colder. I could hear the faint crackle of the PA system somewhere behind me, a whisper of static barely audible over the blood pounding in my ears. I wanted to look up just once to make sure he hadn't moved, but I didn't. Instead, I turned toward the guard booth, every step deliberate, slow, unhurried. I told myself, "You're not running, you're not afraid, you're following the rule." When I reached the booth door, I hesitated. The urge to glance back was almost unbearable. The silence had changed. It wasn't just quiet, it was expectant. I pulled the door shut behind me and turned to the monitors. Sunny was gone. The camera that faced the front gate showed nothing but empty pavement and the distant shimmer of the fence lights. But I noticed something else. On one of the monitors, far in the background, the reflection of the Ferris wheel's lights had changed color. They were yellow now, bright, cheerful yellow, the exact shade of Sunny's costume. I leaned closer to the monitor. My breath fogged the glass. The lights flickered twice, then the feed cut to static. It was unbearable to be in the guard booth. I felt stuffy and short of breath. I was halfway through my last patrol when the power went out. No flicker, no warning. One moment the path ahead was drenched in the steady hum of sodium lights. The next it was swallowed whole. The faint artificial daylight of the park's flood lamps was replaced by the deep, unyielding dark of the countryside. Somewhere far off, a generator coughed once and died. My flashlight clicked uselessly, dead. Every building around me seemed to lean closer in the dark, their painted faces vanishing into silhouette. I stood there for a long moment, trying to decide if it was worth shouting. The air felt too thick to breathe. My heartbeat filled my ears. Then I remembered Rule 8. The lights in the park may go out. In this case, take a teddy bear in your hands and slowly walk to the main gate. Do not run. He interprets running as an invitation to play tag. You will not win. Attention. If Sunny appears right in front of you, give him the teddy bear and keep walking. My hand trembled as I reached into my satchel. My hand trembled as I reached into my satchel. The bear was still there, soft, threadbare, a stitched smile that seemed almost apologetic. I held it tight, forcing my breath to slow. Then I began walking. The path beneath my boots was wet, the kind of slick that feels alive. I could hear water dripping somewhere, from the log flume maybe, or the fountain near the carousel. The sound echoed through the empty park, turning simple drops into endless hollow notes. I passed the midway games first, their stuffed prizes hanging limp and faceless in the dark. The wind nudged the ring toss sign, and it groaned on its hinges like a closing throat. One step at a time, don't run, don't think. I turned the corner past the merry-go-round tent and froze. The carousel was moving again. I hadn't heard it start. There was no music this time, no motor hum, just the faint grind of the mechanism turning and the soft tap of hooves circling the dirt. I didn't look, but I could feel it behind me. The movement, the air displaced by the spinning mass of wood and painted smiles. The horses turning endlessly in a darkness so complete it felt thick, pressing against the back of my neck. Each turn of the carousel came with a faint squeal, like a sob trapped in machinery. The air grew colder, charged, the kind of static you feel before lightning strikes. My hand tightened around the teddy bear's small plush head. The sound changed. Footsteps. They came from ahead, from the direction of the gate. At first, I thought it was the wind stirring gravel, but then I heard the rhythm. That uneven dragging step I'd seen in the silhouette. He was there. Sunny stood no more than 10 feet ahead, blocking the path. Even in the dark, I could see the faint outline of the mascot head. The wide grin, the round ears, the stiff fur matted with shadows. The fabric seemed darker now, not the cheerful yellow of day, but something deeper, tarnished, as if soaked through. He didn't move. The air between us buzzed with the kind of silence that demands acknowledgement. Every instinct screamed to run, to turn, to do something. But I did what the rule said. I took a small step forward. My arm shook as I held the teddy bear out in front of me, like a peace offering. "Here," I whispered, my voice barely recognizable. "Take it." The figure didn't reach out, didn't shift, but the darkness around him seemed to ripple, like the air itself recoiled from the moment. Slowly, almost tenderly, his hand moved. The oversized mascot pole rose with an awkward puppet-like motion and brushed the bear from my hand. I felt the faintest tug, like a child accepting a toy, and then the weight was gone. I didn't look up. I didn't speak. I just kept walking. Each step away from him was a fight. My body wanted to collapse, to run screaming, but the part of me that still believed in survival wouldn't let it. I walked until the gravel turned to asphalt, until the iron gates loomed above me like a salvation that didn't want to open. Behind me, I heard sobbing, soft, wet, childlike sobs echoing across the empty park. I kept moving, never looking back, the sound of it following me all the way to the gate. When I finally reached my car and turned the headlights on, the park behind me was still pitch black. No power, no movement, no sound. I quit this morning. Didn't even bother waiting for the manager. The park never called me back. Maybe they knew. Maybe no one wanted to ask questions. The local news had already buried the old story about Sunny's massacre deep enough. No one needed a sequel. I spent the next few weeks trying to piece myself together. Sleep was the hardest part. My dreams were full of distorted music, warped carnival tunes and laughter without faces. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, swearing I could still hear the carousel turning somewhere far away. But over time, even that faded. The nightmares lost their edge. I started sleeping again, living my normal life. I found another job, day shift this time, loading trucks for a warehouse near the highway. The pay was worse, but the light helped. The ordinary hum of forklifts and chatter grounded me. The world above ground had no room for ghost stories. And yet, sometimes, when I passed a store window or saw a child holding a teddy bear, I'd feel that same prickling sensation behind my eyes, like I was being watched through a pane of memory. I ignored it. I told myself I was fine. That night, I worked late. Overtime, mindless but comforting. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, the lot was empty except for the flicker of a dying streetlight. I remember the hum it made, like a cheap neon sign about to die. When I unlocked my door, everything seemed ordinary at first. The faint smell of detergent, the hum of the refrigerator. I tossed my jacket on the chair, kicked off my boots, and noticed that the air felt wrong, like someone had been there. I turned on the living room light. That's when I saw it, lying neatly on my couch, arranged like a display. The mask came first into focus. Sunny the bear's broad, cheerful grin, the kind of molded mascot head that had no business fitting inside a normal apartment. Its synthetic fur was faded, the once bright yellow now a diseased tan, crusted with something dark around the jawline. The eyes, those huge plastic cartoon eyes, caught the ceiling light and seemed to shimmer wetly, as though they were watching me, waiting. And beside it, a knife. The blade still glistened with something dark. I didn't move for a long time, didn't breathe. The only sound was my heartbeat and the faint tick of the kitchen clock, each second louder than the last. However, the silence was broken by a hum. Just a few notes. The park's theme song, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. My vision tunneled. I stumbled backward until I hit the wall, keeping my eyes locked on that mask. For a split second, I thought I saw the mouth twitch. I don't remember much after that. I think I ran, maybe screamed. When I came back to myself, I was outside in the parking lot, barefoot, shaking, staring up at the window of my apartment, where the curtains had shifted ever so slightly, as though something had moved behind them.